All right, welcome back to another episode of Path of Purpose. Today I'm here with Winston Shaw. Winston is a comedian, and we're both in Austin, Texas. So Winston, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hell yeah, buddy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. All right, let's just get right into it. So Winston,
Uh,
how did you get into comedy?
uh, I think I was always like naturally, like in school, I think I was like always like the one that was like, I didn't care about grades. I didn't care about class. I was just like, I enjoyed making people laugh. And if I could do that all day, then school wasn't too bad. And so I think then, finally, after a lot of grace and a lot of summer school, I finally graduated high school. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go to college now because that's what I'm supposed to do. And then I got into college and I couldn't make people like, because it's everybody's strangers. So you can't really build like a big relationship. And so I was like, oh, I miss making people laugh all the time. Like, and then it just kind of clicked. And there was a comedian named Nate Bargatze who like put out a special. He was from Tennessee. And I watched his first special and I was like, oh my God, like I can at least give that a shot. And then did an open mic at 19 and just was addicted.
Wow. So at what point did you start to think that like this is what I want to do rather than school as a path for you?
Uh, Honestly, it's probably like after the second open mic. Like the first one,
Wow.
I was like, let's not jump the gun, and then the second one, I was like, I'm dropping out. Like this is what I want to do.
Wow. So how did those first two open mics go?
The first one went well enough to show up to do the second one. The second one, it was like you started to develop like an idea. Like it didn't go as good as the first, but I think you just kind of like you start to like even then you start to kind of build an ear for I guess laughs. And
Mm.
so second one went well enough. The third one was like the worst experience of my entire life, but I had already dropped out at that point, so it was kind of too late.
Wow. So in terms of timeline, so you do your first one sophomore year, and then when was the second one?
Oh man, I think it was exactly a week later.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then when was the third one?
I think it was 2 weeks after that,
And
and
then you
that
just
was like
dropped out.
no, I dropped out after the second one. The third one was like that was a disaster. I mean, that was like one of the worst experiences, but it was too late at that point. I had already dropped out. After the first two, they went well enough that I was like, "Oh, I've got this. Like I have a gift. I've got this figured
Yeah.
out." And I was just ready to pull the plug on everything. Like I would have,
Wow. So I want to get back to that third experience a little
Mhm.
bit later down the line, but what did that second one feel like to the point where like it gave you enough confidence to like just like fully just drop out and pursue that?
I mean, I don't even know if it was confidence per se. I just remember being so miserable in school that I think it just like it almost felt like a break because like I was still in a room full of strangers doing open mics, but like I felt like I wasn't in a room full of strangers. Whereas like when I was in school, I was like headphones in, don't talk to me, don't look at me. I'm gonna be on my phone the whole like I didn't care about any of it. And so I think to find something that I actually cared about, I was like my brain kind of flipped a switch and was like, oh, we should put everything into that.
Mm.
And until if I lost interest in it, is what it is. You can always go back to school or do whatever you wanted to do originally, but it just didn't
Mm.
make sense at that time.
It sounds like even from that first time you doing the open mic, like something in you like clicked.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Wow. So then so then you drop out after the second one, and then the third one, what was at that point, this is your first one where you're doing this full time, right?
Yeah,
So I'm
this
assuming
is
there's
my
like there's more pressure on you, right?
yeah. 100%. I mean, I was the only when I dropped out, I didn't tell anybody. Like that was just between me and myself. And so I was like, this is what I do for work now. And so like my mindset completely shifted. It went from like something
Mm.
fun to like now all my eggs are in this basket. We have to shoot a special by next week or I fail. Like it was like so much
Yeah.
pressure. And then I went up there and like I think for me personally, like a flaw that I have is like when I do get that kind of pressure put on me, I tend to be like, I don't give a fuck. Like
Yeah.
I want it to stop. And so I think that's kind of what I did. And I went up there and told a story about getting robbed at gunpoint. And I was like, I had convinced myself that I was so like, because the first two had gone well enough. So I was like, I can just go up there and talk. Like, I've got this in the bag. No jokes, no punchlines. Like I was just ready to go up there. And I mean, when I say you could hear a gnat sneeze in that
Mm,
room, like it was dead silence for like seven
wow.
minutes. Yeah.
Wow. So what did it feel like then to to have it come easy at first, like in those first two experiences, to like having this experience now where this just happened?
Oh, it was a nightmare. I mean, it was horrible. I wanted to. At that point, I was like, well, I'm toast now. I remember like some lady gave me $60 because she was like, keep your head up, and I remember like that being like a weird thing because I was like, I just, you know, the fact that it was so bad that somebody had to give me cash to be like,
Yeah.
go get yourself a beer or something. But
Yeah.
I think that was that might have played a bigger part than I had realized at the time because it was just kind of like a it's going to be okay type of
Mm,
gesture, which
yeah.
it was just a stranger, which I thought was weird.
Yeah. Wow. So at what point then did you pick up and move to Austin?
Oh man, so I mean, I started when I was 19, coming up on 20. I moved to Austin probably. You got to think also when I started, it was like 3 months of like open mics, and then COVID hit,
Yeah.
4 maybe, and so like you know, right after COVID, it was probably like May or June of 2021. I moved
Hmm.
here.
Okay. And for like the soul, what was your reason for moving here?
It was straight up stand up.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
you heard like this is the place to be for comedy and you
yeah. I mean,
decided
it
to
was
move
kind
here.
of like it's the gold rush right now for stand up comedians. Like when I mean
Yeah.
Rogan kind of put out the bat signal and was like, we're moving here. We're going to make a scene the way we want it to be,
Yeah.
and there's not going to be any cancel culture. There's not going to be any kind of
Hmm.
bullshit. Then me and 1,000 other comedians decided to pull the plug and move here.
Yeah. How has moving here impacted your work?
Tremendously, like tremendously. I would say like the biggest thing. I think I still had the somewhat of the same. It's I think it's always easy to be a big fish in a little pond. So I think anywhere, no matter what you're doing, if you have some form of natural talent or knack for
Yeah.
something, it's very easy to get a big head
Hmm.
in that environment. Like if you don't switch up your environment, you start to think that you're better than you really are. Because I
Mm,
remember thinking like, oh, I'm gonna be fine when I get to Austin, and then you
yeah.
just like it goes from doing an open mic in front of 15 comedians at some local bar or whatever to now you're at a comedy club performing in front of 80 comedians who are all dead on the inside and don't want
Yeah.
to so
Mm,
you learn very quickly that it's kind of you're in this by yourself to a certain extent. Like you have
yeah.
buddies and stuff like that, but it really is just like it is you and your craft, and
Mm,
it's not a team game.
yeah. Wow. Do you think that that was more so because of like the amount of people who are pursuing that here, like the more like higher quality of talent, or do you think it's more so the just like how different the audience feels?
I think it's 100% because everybody moved here for the same thing. And I
Yeah.
think everybody was in a different point in their career, especially
Hmm.
everybody coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
There were comedians that had been doing it 10 years and then COVID hit and then they moved here.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of that. So I think a lot of people that moved here moved with like this mentality of like, if it doesn't work out here, it's
Hmm.
never going to work out anywhere. And like
Yeah.
they were like, I've got to move here to make something happen. A lot of people have families and stuff. So like
Hmm.
money's a big part of it too. It's like I'm trying to get paid like get out of my way type of mentality.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So do you think is it being here now and having been here for a few years, is it different than what you expected when you first came?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think I like it a lot more now because I think there
Yeah.
was still like that melting pot energy when we were all first here, which was fun. It was like exciting because everything was just now getting built. But now it's
Hmm.
kind of like everything's kind of established. There's kind of like, there's people that do this club, there's people that do that club. These open mic, everything's kind of set right now. So not too much
Yeah.
is, it's still growing tremendously, but in a different way.
Mm. And what way is that?
I would say more so like it's starting to feel like an entertainment town as opposed to
Mm.
it's kind of like if you're building a skyscraper, it's like we watched it go up and now it's like Now you can be inside the size group. Now it's like this whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot less chaotic, but a lot more competitive, I would say.
Yeah. Mm. How is the chaos? How is it being less chaotic different?
I
Like, what
think
does that
because
feel
there's
like?
structure. Oh, it feels
Hmm.
good. But I think there's like established clubs now. It's not like I think everybody to a certain degree was like a chicken with their head cut off when they first got here. And
Yeah.
it's like you're just hitting open mics because you know that's there, you know
Hmm.
somebody that's going to be there that you can talk to or hang out with or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think there was just not a lot of. I think in anything, if there's no structure, chaos is naturally like right behind it. So I think that
Yeah.
was just, you take that many open mic comedians or stand up comedians in general and put them in the same town and tell them
Yeah.
to figure it out. It's like, there's got to
Mm.
be structure.
Yeah. Along this like journey of like being here, has there been like any point in your journey where you felt like you questioned your your like future in comedy?
Oh, like once a week, yeah, all the time. But that's. I mean, if you can get through that, I think you found something that's worth spending time on.
Mm.
I think if you're doing something that you care about, you're always going to be questioning whether you made the right call or whether you made the right decision or if you're doing the right thing because I think it just speaks to how much you actually care about it.
Yeah.
If you're doing something you don't care about, you're not questioning, whether you're doing it 100% or not, whether you've made the right decision. You don't care.
Yeah.
So I think, it's definitely something that, or at least the way that I look at it when it comes to that
Mm.
kind of stuff.
So when that doubt creeps in, then what do you tell yourself?
I mean, there's only so much you can tell yourself. I mean, you can be like, it's going to be okay, but it's like no one knows. Like, I don't know, and that's kind
Yeah.
of like I get excited about that because I
Mm.
think it's like, you know, even if say stand up didn't work out, like the connections, the people that you've met, the skills that you've kind of honed and crafted doing that opens the door to a million other things. So it's kind of like, I don't look at it as like a succeed or fail. It's like, okay, if stand up ends up being something down the road that I'm like, I lose passion in it or whatever, it would definitely, I feel like, steer me into something else that I find this new passion for. That would be
Yeah.
somewhere in the same realm of stand up.
Mm. Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point in like talking about like the process versus like the destination.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that a lot of comedians have that similar mindset? Like just generally speaking, like do you think more of them are like process oriented or more so like trying to just be at that point where like they're famous or whatever and they can just like coast on?
I think it really just depends on the comedian per se, but I think a lot of people, especially like in Austin, because it's like the new comedy capital or whatever. I think a lot of people move here and think it's just going to be like, oh, I'll do Kill Tony one time, I'm gonna be famous.
Yeah.
Which, like, I know two people that have had that experience since I've been here since the show started. Like, it just doesn't work that way. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of people move here with those goals in mind, and then you very quickly, which I had goals like that too. It's like I'm going to be on Rogan and shit. It's like it doesn't work that way. Like
Yeah.
you kind of have to go through the bullshit for a while
Yeah.
before you kind of see any type of reward. And if you can tolerate that, then you found something you care about. If not, then you know,
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Like knowing that you have to be in the weeds.
yeah, you have to. And if it's worth it, then you found something you care about. And I think that's like I think that's in anything in life, relationships, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like if you can tolerate the bad, then the good's just that much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there a specific point where like you realize that you're going to have to do a lot more work than you originally intended?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My first open mic here.
What was that like?
Oh, I went up there spitting the hits. The hits at the time, like I was like, oh, I'm gonna hit him with this and that, and I go up there, and it was like I had never done an open mic where there wasn't like some form of crowd. And the
Hmm.
problem with open mics here is there's so many comedians, like the only crowd that you have is other comedians.
Mm.
And so I went up there trying to, cat's got the zoomies. I went up there trying to basically spit my hits, and then you just realize like no comedian gives a shit about what you're saying. at an open
Mm.
mic. Like they're just waiting to do their 3 minutes the same
Yeah.
way I was waiting to do mine. And that was like immediately I was like, oh, like you have to, and which I liked it because it kind of forces you to think about stand up in a completely different way.
Mm.
It's not about like what can I say to make these people laugh. It went from that to like what can I do to make these people laugh. Like
Mm.
if I have to like pour water on my face, like you just get creative. It gets very
Yeah.
physical. You might scream, you might stand on a stool. Like you can just do stuff to
Yeah.
try to get people to look up.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. Was there, how does that like change your approach of like what your approach is now versus like when you were first starting out?
Oh, when I first started out, I would like, I mean, it was like rehearsing like a movie script. Like I would literally write everything out word for word, and I would say it over and over and over until I memorized like every single word. And then I would go up there and I would time it out so it was like exactly 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever. Like I don't do that at all anymore. Like that would be a nightmare. Like that's just way too much. I like going up there and being present. That's my big thing now.
Mm.
It's like I like having fun with it. It's not like a
Yeah.
I think the nerves they haven't gone away, but they come in a different way now. It's like it's more of like an excited energy as opposed to like, well, I don't want to fuck this up. I don't want to butcher my
Yeah.
words. It's like, you know, you get bad crowd. I think you bomb enough, like it just really doesn't matter. It's always going to sting a little bit, but you just kind of learn to kind of take, I guess, roll with the punches.
Yeah. How long did it take you to like feel comfortable on stage?
I mean, I wouldn't even say I'm comfortable yet. I mean, I've been doing it what coming up on 5 years, I guess, and I'm still not like. I think it takes a long time to get like comfortable because I think there's just
Yeah.
things that you're always going to have to deal with that
Yeah.
are new that you haven't quite dealt with yet, which is
Yeah.
fun.
Like do you feel like you're comfortable in like settings that you've already performed in? Like if you've performed for 80 people, like would you say like you feel comfortable in that? But if it was like whatever, like 500, like a new element, do you feel like that carries more weight?
No, not. I mean, not necessarily. I think it would have like earlier on, but now it's like I think the number of people really doesn't make a difference because if you're confident in your set, it could be one person or it could be 1,000 people. It's like, if you know what you're going to do when you're up there and if you can kind of find your voice to a certain degree, it takes forever to do that. But if you've got somewhat of an idea of that, then that's like, you know, it kind of takes a lot of the pressure off because at that point you
Yeah.
feel like you're just hanging out with people regardless of
Yeah.
how many people there are.
Mm. How do you get to that point?
Through a lot of bombing, like a lot of bombing, like
Yeah.
consistent bomb 15 times in the same night, like that type of like you got to just bomb over and over and
Yeah.
over until you kind of go numb to that.
Mm.
And
For someone
yeah,
who's like never done that before, like what would you compare like that feeling to of like getting comfortable on stage and like getting into your groove with a specific set?
as far as like just like if I was doing a show,
Yeah, yeah, like what does that feel like or how do you know when you're in that groove?
typically I can get a gauge on like the crowd as a whole, like before I go up. Like I can just kind of hear them, what they're laughing at, and whatever. And I'm typically like sitting there listening, like, all right, they're
Mm.
laughing at this, they're laughing at that. And I won't cater my material to that, but I'm like, okay, so that means like I might say this word a specific way. I might get more physical. I might do more crowd work.
Yeah.
Like if it's comedian after comedian and they're going up bombing, I'm not going up
Mhm.
there with material. I'm going to go up
Yeah.
there and do crowd work. I'm going to try to get them engaged a little bit,
Mm.
and then if it
Yeah.
works, then you hit them with material.
Hmm.
But they're not going to be receptive to anything that you're saying joke wise if they haven't laughed at the past three comedians that went
Yeah.
up.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like there's such a big element to it, which is like picking up on like the audience's energy.
Yeah, 100%. And you kind of want to, you don't want to like I don't want to say set the bar for the energy, but you want to kind of like you want to feel what they're feeling and then try to kind of guide it to where you want it.
Yeah.
So it's like I have darker jokes than I'd say some comedians. Like I like to kind of go to a dark place sometimes on stage. And sometimes people don't like that.
Yeah.
But you can kind of feel that out and even if people don't like that, you can find a way to kind of steer them into a position where they're still going to laugh at it, even though
Yeah.
they think it's messed up or fucked up, whatever. They're still going to
Hmm.
laugh. But it takes a good bit of kind of like, we're going to go this way and you're going to come with
Yeah.
me type of thing.
Hmm. Who would you say are like some of your like biggest like creative influences of like other artists?
Just in general, or as far as like comedians go.
Yeah, yeah, comedians. Or like
Uh,
yeah, it could be other artists if they influence your work more.
man, it's like a little bit of everybody. I mean, I I get a lot of stuff from musicians, like their work ethics and the way they kind of just operate and move. I
Yeah.
think musicians and comedians are similar in a lot of ways, but I mean, as far as comedy goes, like Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Nate Bargatze, Shane Gillis. Uh, I mean, the list goes on, and I mean, I'm just trying to think of people I would really consider, I guess, role models and stand up. Kevin Hart, I guess, because he was like, I think he was the first comedian I'd ever seen ever.
Yeah.
But I mean, those would probably be the main ones.
Mm. What so like what about musicians inspires you as a comedian?
Just the way it's, I can't remember where I read it, but it was something like all musicians wish they were comedians, and then all comedians wish they were musicians. Because it's like, a comedian, when you see a, like, as a comedian, like, and I see a rock star on stage, he's getting like just adored and loved. And I think a lot of comedians are in comedy because there's something in their brains that wants that attention, and
Mm.
they're addicted to attention for whatever reason, whether their parents didn't love them or something fucked up happened, whatever. And so I think you see like a musician on stage is getting all that praise,
Mm.
and they're not having to open up. Like, they're just getting this what seems like unconditional love
Yeah, wow.
for their work. But then, if you talk to the musician, they see the comedian on stage and they want that because they feel like the people are actually loving the comedian for who they are. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Like, it's more so like, I might have worded that poorly, but to a certain degree, that there's like a lack of,
Yeah.
there's less of a curtain with the comedian than there is with the
Mm.
musician, because the musician can put on a facade and like act like rappers and stuff like that. You can act real tough, and then as soon as you feel like nobody knows who you actually are. They
Mm.
just kind of want to be with you. It's more like a I don't want to say a zoo animal, but you just kind of feel like a spectacle in a certain
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
As far as the musicians,
Yeah.
I think that they become the physical embodiment of their work.
Mm.
I think music is an auditory thing, and so I think the artist becomes the visual representation of that. So
Yeah.
whatever those music, lyrics, beats, whatever those emotions get generated within somebody, then you
Yeah.
put a face to that, and they become that physical representation of the way that you felt when you were listening to their work.
Mm. Do you think that comedians can do that? Can reach that point?
Yeah. I mean, I think social media has been a big thing for stand up, because I think you can see a clip and fall in love with somebody. You can see a 30-second clip and be like, who the hell is this? And then stalk them and become infatuated to the same degree.
Yeah.
But what I think the difference is like, it's hard because it's like when you hear a song that you really like, you want to go see the concert. But it's like, if you hear a joke that you really like, and then you go see that person perform and they tell the same joke, you're like, oh, I've already heard that one.
Yeah.
So it's like a weird thing. It's like that
Mm.
you want them to fall in love with you as a person, but at the same time, it's like, if that's the material that got you through the door, now am I writing jokes to cater for the people that, it's a weird kind of double-edged sword.
Yeah. Well, do you think what stirs up the emotion in someone for a musician is do you think it's the like the words in the song or do you think it's like the emotions that come up during the song that they're playing?
For the musician, oh man, I don't know. I mean, that would be like, I don't know, that seems like chicken or the egg. Like, I think it all stems from emotion in some way, shape, or form.
Mm.
But whether that translates into lyrics or the actual music itself, I think that just depends on. I think good music is finding a way to kind of like make both
Yeah.
coincide, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with stand up. It's like,
Yeah.
if you're angry all the time, it's finding a way to make being angry funny. And if you can
Mm,
find those two and just match them together, now you've got something worth doing.
yeah. So then how does a comedian get really good at like being the musician of comedy?
I think finding your own voice, that's the hardest part, in my opinion, with
Yeah.
stand up, is like finding your genuine voice. Cause like it's so easy to like, I don't want to say steal other jokes, but it's like everybody grew up looking up to somebody,
Yeah.
especially in stand up. Like if you're a comedian, you grew up watching somebody. And so I think it's very hard to, I don't want to say get their voice out of your head, but being able to like learn from them without losing any of the voice that you had to make you think you had a
Yeah.
chance to stand up in the first place.
Yeah.
And so I think that just takes a lot of time. And I think it takes, like I think we had talked about this before. It's like, I don't say no
Yeah.
to anything
Yeah.
just because I like putting myself in random sporadic situations to see what I do. And then
Hmm.
I can kind of look back on it and be like my reactions are never calculated. Like I'm just going to react naturally. And I feel like with enough experience like that, you kind of get a sense of who you are as a person, let
Yeah.
alone a comedian, but then you can kind of, mend the gaps.
Yeah. Who do you think does like a really good job of doing that as a comedian?
Shane Gillis.
Yeah.
Shane Gillis, Dave Chappelle, Nate Bargatze, I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems like there's very little facade there.
Mm,
Like they're
yeah.
just very, very good. And they're just up, it looks like they're just up there talking,
Yeah.
which a lot of comedians look that way. That's, I think, how it looks on the outside. But it's like, from a comedian standpoint, they literally look like they're up there just talking.
Yeah. Wow. So how does one practice that ability of finding their own voice besides just like doing it more?
I mean, this is me per se. I don't know if this is advice naturally, but like I remember getting frustrated because like I wanted to like get more in tune with like finding my own perspective on things, which we've always only ever had our perspectives. They can be shaped and shifted and molded by things you watch or hear, but it's still yours.
Yeah.
Um, I think for me, for a while, like I said, this is not advice, but like I used to get just like really, really drunk, or I'd smoke a bunch of weed and I would turn on the camera just like this, but I would just talk to it.
Mhm.
And then I would watch it the next day. So like if I had a bunch of notes in my phone from things that had happened, I would just tell the story as if I was talking to buddies. And next day I'd go back and watch it and be like, oh, okay, because there's no filter when you're kind of messed
Yeah.
up like that. You're just gonna let your true colors show. And
Hmm.
so I think it was a way of getting it out with all the walls down temporarily.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you
Would
can
you
watch
say
it
it's
with the
like
walls.
yeah, would you say it's like using the substances is like an easier way to let go?
Yes, 100%. And I think that was a big thing was like they said it wasn't advice. It was nobody ever told me to do that. I
Yeah.
just remember thinking like I just put two and two together one night and I was like, well, I'm not going to go out and drive. I'm not going to be out doing something stupid. I'm going to be sitting like a lunatic in my living room talking to a camera as I'm just
Yeah.
belligerent.
Yeah.
But it's like it's getting the dam out for the water to come through. It's like
Mm,
everything just kind of comes out.
yeah. So do you ever like drink or do anything before you get on stage now?
Yeah. I mean, typically I will never get high before I go on stage. Like that's just
Yeah.
not fun for me. But
Yeah.
like I'll typically like depending on where I'm at, like it just kind of depends. Like if I'm gonna work on new stuff, yeah, absolutely. I'll probably drink a few beers and just go up
Yeah.
there. And it's kind of like that same mentality with the camera thing. It's just like you're just kind of letting yourself off the leash a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, if it's a bigger show, I might take a shot just to kind of like, just or whatever. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Do is that it was is that like a common thing that comedians do?
Every comedian has some form of vice before they go up on stage
Wow.
until they
That's
get
so
sober. And when they
interesting.
get sober, stand up becomes their vice.
When they become sober, stand up becomes their vice. What does that mean?
So, like, I think comedians have a very notorious problem with like drugs, alcohol, whatever kind of addiction. Like, comedians naturally, I think, I mean, it's kind of like musicians and rock bands and stuff. I think there was just like, there's a dark side to stand up the same way there is to kind of any art form. And so I
Yeah.
think comedians struggle with that and, do the hard drugs and they go to the
Mhm.
dark place and they've got unhealed wounds on the inside that they're trying to cope with.
Yeah.
And I think you either get really good art out of going to that place intentionally. And I think the lucky one, it's kind of grim to say, but like the lucky ones survive
Mhm.
and they're the ones that can kind of get sober. I think it just be like stand up goes from like this byproduct of the drugs to the drug, if that makes any
Mm.
sense. Like you
Yeah.
take away the drugs and your genuine passion is still there. It's just a completely different level of passion for it now because that's all you're all in on it. There's
Yeah.
nothing fueling that besides your love for it.
Yeah. Why do you think people need to get to the point where they have like success in their career to be able to do that?
What do you mean?
From what you said before, it seemed like you were insinuating that they like they get sober like later on down their line or
Yeah.
later on down the line in their career
Mhm.
rather than like being sober as they continue to grow in fame.
I think a lot of it is a lack of confidence. And I think a lot of it is a lack of self love. And I think a lot of it is convincing yourself that you can't do it without it. So I think there's like a trifecta type of thing there.
Mm. Do you notice a difference of like when you do it sober versus like having like a few beers before?
Uh, yeah. I mean, for me personally, my biggest difference is I notice I'll talk a little bit faster if I go up there with nothing.
Yeah.
There's like this sense of urgency, I guess, because you kind of want, like, I think that's the feeling of it being the drug is I'm very quick to want to get to the laughs because that's where you feel good. You get that
Yeah.
high. And so
Yeah.
I think when if I drink a few beers, everything's kind of slowed down and I'm just really hanging out. I'm not booking it for a laugh.
Yeah.
And you feel a little bit more, I guess, you feel it's more of a hangout as opposed to like a TED talk at that point, at least
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. Like more of like being present with the crowd rather than like trying to be a spectacle.
Correct. And you're not like, you're able to be, I think when you're constantly looking for the next laugh, you're not present. Like
Yeah.
I think when you're present, you can talk for 2 minutes and you always want to cut fat off a joke and you don't want to
Yeah.
eat up your time with bullshit. But like you can kind of there's not this go 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 mentality. You can kind of like, all right, let's we're gonna take this slow. There's gonna be a punchline, but just let me
Yeah.
get to it. And then later on I can figure out what parts to cut out or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah. Hmm.
These are some damn good questions, Jason. I'm impressed. This is some deep stuff.
Had to prepare for you.
Golly, you weren't joking, man. All those damn books in the background. Looks like you read all of them before this.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's really interesting about like the part about like people who work in the sort of like entertainment area and
Yeah,
like the correlation to like using substances.
yeah.
And yeah, I'm curious like are the people like cuz I don't know that much about comedy. Like I've
Mhm.
seen like some specials and like I've been to a few shows, but like are the people who are the best at it are they completely sober? Like when I think of like a professional athlete
Mhm.
or if I think of like even some of the best musicians, it seems like the ones who do it the longest at the highest level are almost like always sober.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Stand up's like a weird one though because it's like I think there's kind of a correlation with like I don't want to say musicians in general. Well, at least for me, like I can talk more about like rappers that I know than I can
Yeah.
about like musicians in general, just because I listen to more rap than anything else. But like I think there's like a question of like what if somebody didn't overdose or what if somebody didn't like how good would they be? Like some people, it's sad to see it, but it's like the drugs really were the reason that they were doing as well that they were doing. That's like a real thing for certain performers.
Do you
Like
think
you take
so?
away the yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. You see somebody.
You don't think that that creative energy is within them?
I do, but I think there's such a blockade for certain people. Like if you've been through a
Yeah.
lot of trauma, it's like you can go through therapy, you can exercise, you can do all the things that you're told to do to potentially help that. But I think
Yeah.
if you've gone through enough and especially if there's not a desire to get help,
Yeah.
like the only thing that was fueling that passion is gone.
Yeah.
I think
Mm,
that's especially with like depression and stuff. It's like, even if you're doing something you love, you could still be depressed. And I
yeah.
think for a lot of people to numb that pain to go do what they love is the only reason they can do what they love.
Wow.
It, yeah, which is dark. That's kind of like a sad thing, but
Yeah.
there's definitely like circumstances and situations where like you take away the booze or the drugs and they're just not the same person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tricky one.
Yeah. And so that's like at that point that's the admirable I don't want to say admirable, but like I've kind of always been drawn to people that like have understood that to an extent about themselves
Yeah.
and kind of like a captain kind of sinks with the ship type of situation where it's like
Mm,
they I don't want to say they like gave their life to their act or their art or whatever, but they kind of did. Like they've basically
yeah.
been like, what I'm creating is bigger than what I am. And so
Mm,
I'm just gonna fuel that and let that be the representation of me forever. And
wow.
even though I won't be here, that will continue to remain.
So who comes to mind when you talk about that?
Uh I'd say I mean in general, like you think about like people like Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain, like Mitch Hedberg. Like Juice World. Like I'm thinking of like just people in general, but like people like that, it's like they know they have a problem.
Yeah.
They just there's something in them that just like it's almost like a level of misery that you just don't want to get help for. And
Yeah.
it's like people can reach out and they can try to, but it's like they just engulf themselves in their work because
Mm,
I think partially their work gives them an excuse and a reason to go to that point, you know, getting
yeah.
fucked up wise.
Yeah.
But I think also it's like that's their only time of peace is when they're
Mm,
super fucked up working on something that they care about. And,
yeah.
it's weird. It's a very weird thing. But I feel like those three came to mind as far as like, I feel like there was a conscious decision, not a conscious decision per se, but like there was a moment for them that was kind of like, I'm just like, I'm not here for a long time and I can
Mm,
accept that.
yeah. But do you think they really knew that, or do you think they just thought that?
I mean, man, it's hard to say. It's like do you really know or do you just kind of say that? Like I've heard a bunch of people say stuff like that before. It's like I'm not going to live to see 30. It's like, well, nobody really knows that. Like, you could wake up with a change of heart tomorrow and find something else or do something else, whatever. But I feel like with those three specifically, like with their level of art and their
Yeah.
level of, I feel like that was not a conscious decision, but it was kind of like a, a negotiation with themselves. And that was like
Mm,
the trade off.
mm,
Because I think they were more in love with their art than they were with themselves, which is like a weird thing, But I think at that point, if
yeah.
you don't, if you're that passionate about it, but you hate yourself, or there's just this hole in you that you can't fill, you can literally spend your entire waking day pouring yourself into that
Yeah.
because that is going to be here for much much longer than you ever will be.
Yeah. Do you think that those artists could get to that point of creation without the drugs though?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think that just boils down to a person. I think
Yeah.
everybody can tap into a creative flow of some way, shape, or form, but to that degree and that level, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like really, really hard
Mm,
to know. I think that's like I said, that's a person to person case.
yeah. Yeah. Also, it's like, when do you ask the question of like, hey, is my relationship with this substance getting in the way of my creative ability?
Yeah, and it's like that's another real thing is like when do you have that talk with yourself because like I know a bunch of comedians that are like I don't want to say like raging alcoholics, but it's like if you you stop drinking, like things might get different. Like they
Mm,
might you like it's not saying that they might not be the same person, but it's like at that point you're having to focus on yourself more than you are with what you care about.
yeah. Yeah.
Like it's really hard to get sober and clean if you're not your first priority.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you make that observation yourself when you're the one who's struggling with that?
That's the tough part is like, if people love you, especially if you have a shtick on stage, Like if
Yeah.
you've got this persona where like you're the fun party guy and you drink all the time, it's like now you've built a fan base for that,
Yeah.
and now everybody wants to see you do that, and
Mm,
everybody loves when you chug a beer or you shotgun. People like when you do that,
yeah.
and so now it becomes this thing, and then you kind of convince yourself, well, this is just who I am, and then it's like then you get
Mm,
nervous about like if I stop, are people going to stop liking me? Is this the only
yeah.
reason they liked me? And I think that's like the addiction vine for any kind of
Yeah.
substance. Is
Yeah.
it becomes a part of you, and you convince yourself that you're not you without it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the question is is that even though people are loving you for that, is that you?
Yeah, and then it's been if you've been using whatever for long enough, you forget who you are
Yeah.
because you've become this idea of yourself in your head that's fueled by not being present.
Yeah.
Like you're just avoiding being present. So it's a weird little line. But I mean, it's so hard to look yourself. I mean, that's why interventions are a thing,
Yeah.
because most people that go and get to that point, it's like the odds of them looking themselves in the mirror. It's either you let them hit rock bottom to the point of no return,
Yeah.
or you have somebody that cares enough about you to be like, yo, this is what I see from the outside.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you've been doing this for 5 years now?
Coming up, yeah.
So where do you hope to see yourself in 5 years from now?
I mean, I would like to be consistently getting paid to travel in 5 years. I would say, like, I don't have like a goal for like a Netflix special. I'm not going to be like, I want to be the a household name. Like, I genuinely just enjoy doing what I care about. So if I
Yeah.
can get paid to travel, and whether I'm breaking even or not, I don't care. Like, as long as I'm doing that in 5 years, that I'm still doing what I want to do in my
Yeah.
life. It's not about getting rich or famous or anything like that. Like, I just want to,
Be
to
able to
get
do it.
yeah, to get a check, to get on a plane and go to another city and make a brand new room full of strangers laugh, and then come back home. That's just like fun.
Yeah.
It's just a weird thing, but it's fun. It's like
Yeah.
that would be exciting to have that on a regular basis.
Mm, yeah. Do you feel like there's anything that you need to do differently from what you're doing now in order to be in that position?
Damn, that's a good question, man. That's shit. Man. Um, yeah, I mean, I think there's always room to improve, and I think discipline's a big thing for me, and I think like you have to love the bullshit, but I think there's certain times where you have to embrace the fact that like there's not workarounds for certain things, and I think my
Yeah.
brain doesn't like the idea of that. So whether it's like yeah, I try sometimes I've done it my whole life, but I'm notorious to like convince myself that there's another way. So
Yeah.
like if everybody's like, no, this is what we have to do to get from A to Z, I'm like, well, we get to F, and I'm like, fuck, this sucks, and I'm like, I kind of branch off, and it takes me a little while to be like, oh, everybody else was right, and then I kind of come back.
Yeah.
But it's like I think that's just a maturity thing and a discipline thing. But I mean, as it's I think the realer you are with yourself, the the more that will translate into whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
I think real is something you can't really fake, and it's pretty
Mm,
hard to replicate that.
yeah.
And I think if you're lying to yourself, you can never get to that point.
Yeah. So are there specific things that come to mind, like when you say that, about like beating around the bush with certain things or trying to take a shortcut?
For me personally, like there's always that. Like I would say, social media is a big thing for stand up
Yeah.
right now, and I hate social media. I detest it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to look at it. Like I have it because I have to for like getting booked and stuff like that. But that's really it.
Yeah.
Like I don't post. I very rarely repost anything. Like I genuinely just hate it. It's just kind of
Yeah.
gross. But I think right now that is a very big thing, and I think there's definitely times where I'm like I should definitely get on that more. But
Yeah.
then part of me is like I just don't. I think a lot of people post for like the sake of getting that dopamine rush of like, oh my god, look at all these people that like me. It's like, I mean, I would feel good if something went viral or whatever, but it's like I just don't see the point at this specific time in my career. But that's again, that's me making excuses
Mm,
because I just don't want to do it because I just hate social media.
yeah.
But that's me telling myself, oh, I don't need it. I can find out a different way. It's like, no, eventually you're just gonna have to suck it up and just start doing it
Yeah.
and doing it the right way,
Yeah. Mm. How do you know when that's the right time?
to
Or
just start doing it.
how will you know when that's the right time?
Oh, it's never going to be the right time. I'm just going to end up getting to a point where I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I don't care. I'll probably be drunk or something and I'm just going to post it. And then at that point, I've done enough to get the ball rolling. Once the first one, is in anything, once you take the first step, everything else after that kind of just gets easier and easier and easier.
Yeah.
So I think at some point, I'm going to hit a wall of frustration or anger or whatever where I'm just like it's sometimes it drives me a little crazy when I'm like on TikTok and I'll see someone tell a joke and it's like I'm not shitting on the comedian, but it's like it's nothing out of the like I'm not like this is the best joke I've ever heard. But then you look and it's got like 3 million like likes or view and you're like what in the world? Like I should definitely be getting on this.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that aspect of it as well as I might just see a clip one day and be like, I swear to God, like I will not sit back and tolerate this mediocrity. Like I'm just gonna, put out my own damn work and see.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you already know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just a matter of you can lead the horse to water, you just can't make it drink. Eventually, I'm gonna get thirsty enough to where I want to take a drink. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, coming back out of that then. So how have you managed to uh, practice and continue to do stand up for the past 5 years, and also uh, like work outside of that? Like, what has balancing that been like?
I think at first, I mean, it's tough, no matter how you look at it. Like, I am naturally lazy. I think most comedians are, and so like I can work really hard at things that I care about. It's really hard for me to fake caring about something though. So like naturally, I've worked in sales. That's just what I
Hmm.
do. But I detest it to such a high level. Like I hate it. But like I'm good at it, and so that's I just do it. But it's very clear on my face that I don't care at all, which is not a good thing. You want to be able to kind of play the character, but I think that's the way I look at it is like it's a sacrifice, and I'm doing that to fuel and fund, and that's what I'm having to do that to do what I
Yeah.
want to do. And eventually, if you do it well enough and you don't half-ass it, you can quit that other part and you can
Mhm.
just put your work to where you want to put it. But I
Yeah.
think you wouldn't like if someone gave me that position today and was like, "You do stand up full time now." I don't think I would appreciate it as much as I would if I get that 5 years down the road after like literally going through like just more hell. I think the more hell that you go through, the better it feels when you're finally like, I pulled myself out of that. And I think there's a
Yeah.
confidence that comes to that as well.
Mm. Yeah.
But I think, I mean, I don't know. It's working any type of day job to fund a passion or
Hmm.
to kind of keep food on the table is like it's like the starving artist. Like it's a terrible position to be in. Like
Yeah.
it's not very fun, but I think again, if you can tolerate that for
Hmm.
just a teeny amount of time, like in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small amount of time. If you can
Yeah.
tolerate that, then I'm an optimist. I'm telling myself like if I can go through that for long enough, eventually it's going to work out in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. Eventually, and I think that's kind of helps get you out of bed in the morning and put on your damn tie and your clown nose before you go into work. It's just like, oh God, again, another day of
Yeah.
paradise.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming on and talking with me and answering all my questions.
Dude,
I
yeah,
appreciate
absolutely. I
it.
appreciate you coming with some damn good questions, dude. Now I'm gonna be overthinking my rest of my night. Dude, you got somebody cleaning your window. That scared the hell out of me, dude. I thought we were
Oh,
witnessing
I
somebody's
thought
last
that
moments.
too.
Oh
Oh yeah,
God.
it's just out there.
God, that's not your girlfriend, is it?
No.
Okay. Oh
Should be
man.
but
Oh,
cool.
that's
All right.
crazy. I appreciate you having me on.